Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This one is entitled Putting on a Front. Well, this involves my mother once again. This was. We're going to call this very late 80s to very early 1990s. I do not remember when. If it were into the 90s, it would have to be before 1993. So, very early 90s. So, late 80s to early 90s. In 1987 or 88, I'm not entirely clear, my father finished his basement. He had to put up drywall, and he put in a drop ceiling, and he put carpet tiles and a whole thing, and it was freshly painted, freshly done. Everything was in place, all good, brand new, nice and tidy, nice and clean. And in the basement was sort of in four quadrants, if you will, which were kind of dictated by the various light switches. There were a total of four. The first one being the light right when you get down the steps. And that wasn't really much of an area. It was just the area from the last step to the wall and an adjoining kind of area there before you kind of make your way into the next quadrants. And if you were there and went in one direction, you would turn on a light switch that had two fluorescent lights, and that's where I kept the best computer in the house over the years. But that was a later thing. That didn't happen until later on. But there was yet another switch you could turn on that had three lights. This was the biggest quadrant. And the fourth one was two lights there, which had the couch and a coffee table and a TV and a couple of wall units and that kind of stuff. So the one with the three lights was where the computer was. The computer we had at the time was none other than the IBM PCjr. A very outdated machine when we got it. It never sold well in the market, but served me and did wonders for me over all of the years that it was in service. It is still around. The monitor, unfortunately, it can be fixed, but it doesn't really. It was having trouble the last. I think it's a bad solder joint on the board inside where the flyback transformer is, based on a video I saw. But it has not been turned on in forever. It's a long story. Anyways, it was fully operational at the time. On this day, probably a Saturday, my parents had some friends of theirs, Edith and Artie, over to visit. They had three kids. So there was an older sister, a middle brother, and a younger sister. The sisters kind of hung together, and the brother, the boy, kind of hung with me. He was a couple of years younger than me. 3 years younger, I'm not certain exactly. He was still a little shy and naive at the time, and that's fine. And it was all good. I don't know if they had a computer at the time, but later on they got one, and it was a 286, a turbo 286 at like 10 megahertz, and it had a hard drive, and it ran fast. It had VGA graphics and all this kind of shit that the PCjr just couldn't have. So we didn't have it, because why are you going to spend money when this computer that's obsolete and totally not with the times still turns on and works? But that's another story. Anyway, at the time, it was still prime time for this machine, so it's set up. And because we're having people over, we had all of the lights on in the basement. And maybe even the lights in the wall unit on. They would light up. So everything's there. And everything's running. And everything's good. They come over. Oh, why don't you come downstairs and we'll have some hors d'oeuvres? Sounds great, Fran. So we all head downstairs. The party gets started, and the hors d'oeuvres are served. And Fran is down there, and she's wearing her pretty sweater and the whole thing, and she has makeup and she has perfume on, and her hair is done up nice. And I am Fran, Edith. My name is Fran, and I am Fran. Fran, 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 Fran. And this and that, and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. And Edith talks to her, and she's talking to Edith. And meanwhile, Artie is talking to my dad, because guys. And the two girls are running around doing whatever, maybe hanging with my sister if she was there, I can't remember. And I was with the brother, and we were on the computer. So everybody is kind of just milling around the basement. Everything's just going on wherever everybody happens to be. And what kind of conversation? Oh, did I show you this here? Here, come over here. Let me show you that. Oh, by the way, over here, you know, and then Edith comes over to that thing. And blah, 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 blah. So the whole party is going on in typical fashion. There were two telephones in the basement. One was there that was left behind by the previous owners in the house. It's I think a Northern Telecom phone. It's very similar to the one I have in the laundry room that's beige. This one is avocado green. Same type phone, wall phone, rotary, mechanical bell. It never rang. That was a trick that was done in the old days when Ma Bell was still a thing. If you would disconnect the ringer, or I don't know exactly how it goes, they would know how many telephones that you had on the line and would charge you extra per extra phone. So it was common in those days to disconnect the ringers in these telephones so as not to trigger the phone company into having an extra charge. And as it turns out, I can't remember, I'd have to look it up, I probably have a record somewhere. A couple of years after I moved in the house here, this is kind of a quick side story. I just got home from Tiny Middle, and I pulled into the driveway, and maybe there was a good song playing or something, so I decided to just sit there for a minute. Well, a car pulled up across the street, sort of between my house and next door. And the lady rolled the window down, and she took a camera out, and she took a picture of my house. That was odd. Well, anyway, I was a little like, what the fuck is this about? So the song ended, or what have you, or I got too curious, and I said, well, let me get out of the car and go talk to this lady. So I went up to her and I said, hi, is there something I can help you with? She says, what do you mean? I said, you were taking a picture of my house? She said, I used to live here when this house was built. I said, lady, with all due respect, I don't know you from anyone, okay? She gave me an entire story. She knew where stuff was in this house. She knew the next door neighbor at the time, who was still there, the Italians. And as we talked more and more and more, this lady was on the ball. And I said, okay, I mean, you told me enough things that you know this house inside very well. Uh, would you like to come in? And she did. And she pointed out a number of things. And one thing that she told me was they had a telephone in the bar, in one of the, on the back wall of the bar, there's cabinets there. She said there was a black rotary phone that was in there, but that phone didn't ring because the phone company would charge for extra phones. And later I went and I looked in the cabinet, and sure enough, there was like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch hole bored through that so you could fit the cord for the telephone through. Because the telephone plugs were the old 4-prong style, and how that all interfaced and you could unplug it, I don't know, but it was there nonetheless. So she was definitely on the ball, and that's how I can further prove that phones used to have the ringers disconnected. That phone still does not ring today. We've never taken it off the wall to reconnect it or anything like that. But there was one other telephone in my parents' basement over where the couch was. We didn't even really have a, I don't know if it was there at the time. Later on, we had a small table that my sister stole when she moved out of the house. But I don't know if that table was there at the time. If not, the phone just sat on the floor, and it was an AT&T Trimline 210 model, I think, type phone, but it was not that. It was a knockoff of that, but it was the same style where it's kind of like a trimline phone, and you pick it up and it just has this curved thing, and it has the buttons in the handset, and you would talk on it, and it's coiled cord and the whole thing and all that. So Fran is talking to Edith, and my dad is talking to Artie, and blah blah blah. And remember, Fran is there with her pretty sweater and her makeup and her hair and all the whole thing like that. But I'm with the boy, and we are at the PCjr, and we're playing around with different programs and fucking around with different things. Well, I had this program that was written in BASIC. I don't know who wrote it, where it came from, if it was an actual IBM software that I found on one of the discs somewhere and included in one of my compilations or what, doesn't matter, except for the fact that it was running. And we were playing with it. It was a sound effect program. Now, you have to understand that this did not have a sound card. It could not really play digitized sound. That's a lie. It actually could, but there's a lot more involved with that story. It just had a simple thing that would go beep, or you could make it play different tones, and it was relatively easy to program that in BASIC. That's what this program was. There was maybe a spaceship one, something that said phaser, car, horn, I don't even know what else. This was all PC speaker generated stuff, no digitized sound, just the little beeps and boops. Well, think of a regular telephone ringer. It kind of has either one tone that's pulsed very quickly, or maybe a high and low tone that is alternated between very quickly, with a phone that has an electronic ringer. And this one has one somewhere. I don't know where it is, but you know what a phone sounds like because your phone twerps. So we're playing with the spaceship, and we're playing with the car, and we're playing with the this, and we're playing with the that. And then there was the telephone sound effect. Under T for telephone. Ring, ring. And at that moment, here's Miss Pretty Sweater with her hair done and her makeup on. Oh, excuse me, Edith, please. I just need to get the phone here. The next thing you heard was me, who had turned around, saw this happen. Nobody laughed yet. I just said, "Are you serious? You don't know what your own telephone in your own house sounds like when it rings?" And she was standing in that quadrant with the couch right where the phone is, and the phone rang over there where there's no phone. Talk about putting on a front. Holy shit, she would play this shit up. Wow. Now, I'll give you another real quick one on this that I should have really told before. I have told this story before. I don't know if it was part of another old war story or if it was its own in its own right. But there was a time we were over at Edith and Artie's house as guests, and it was Passover. And we're sitting in the living room with Artie and my dad, my sister, myself. Kids maybe were there, not sure. And Fran was sort of not in this conversation because it was more my dad and Artie talking about guy stuff. And maybe my sister and I were talking amongst ourselves, and Fran was just sort of out of the conversation. Now, Fran has always been, and it's a lot worse now, okay, but this was way before. This was 25, 30 years ago. This was a long time ago. My mother would always ooh and ah, and this hurts and that hurts and that, and I get pains. And I grunt when I stand up and stuff, but Fran would go, "Ow! Oi! Ah!" You know, she would do this whole thing and play it up, and we knew that she was milking it. We all knew that this was total bullshit. But this one proved it, because Fran was not part of this current conversation. So she said, "Well, gee, you know, maybe Edith could use it." "Edith, do you need any help in the kitchen?" And Edith called back and she said, "Actually, I would appreciate it if you wouldn't mind, Fran. I'll be right there." And Fran went, boing! Just jumped off of the couch and scurried right in there. And my dad, my sister, and I all looked at each other and just went, putting on a front. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, at this point, in my mother's defense, she's over 70. She's not in great shape. And, yep, things hurt. As of right now, I'm 45. Going to be 46 soon at the time. Probably, maybe by the time this old war story comes out, I'll already be. But anyway, shit does hurt. I cannot do a lot of the things I used to, but I'm still getting around. For how long, I don't know, but Fran was certainly younger at that time than I am now. So, yeah, it was definitely bullshit indeed. Yeah, so anyway, she would put on just a huge front for Edith, but I swear I can't fathom how you don't know what your own telephone in your own house sounds like when you know full well where it is and you're standing right by it and the phone rings over there. And it doesn't even sound good. It doesn't even sound convincing. And yet, sure enough, she picked up the phone. Then we all laughed, and we had a good laugh. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this old war story with Uncle Jay. Once again, this is just one that just popped into my mind out of nowhere. No idea how and why. It just did. Still a whole list to go, so old war stories are not going away for quite some time yet. And that's really all I got. So thank you so much for watching this installment of Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. I will, of course, tell more in the future as I either think of them on the fly or just go through the list for something to do on a rainy day. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.